And it's begun. Trump is now demanding all the documents about the open borders and who was given what orders for the stand downs and to pass people in that had leprosy and TB, which is a felony. And the new attorney general is going to go after them. Jeff Sessions. They are crapping their pants. And with 16 days left, they're trying to start a war with Russia. They're trying to turn jihadis loose all over Europe and the United States. This is a dangerous time to be alive, but also a very exciting time to be alive. I've got a lot of sources, as everybody knows. I'm not bragging. We broke the Benghazi first with Colonel Schaefer and many others like Dr. Steve Pieczenik, Tosh Plumlee, from the guy on the C-130s to the guy, you know, who's been high up in government agencies, you name it. We're going to him here in just a moment. But from my sources, and I mean a lot of them, and I've been getting this for over a year. In fact, I had sources over a year ago, Alex, it's not the Russians, because I was asking. They go, no, it's U.S. intelligence agencies. We even know who. Now we've had British ambassadors and others that have gone to New York, gone to D.C., met with the actual leakers. The leakers represent the U.S. intelligence agencies. Dr. Steve Pieczenik, who has his sources, obviously, was able to come on before the election and say, this is a counter coup. That is correct. It's happening. And now they're waiting. If Obama does much more, and if Hillary and Soros do much more, and they're crazy, if they do much more, then they're going to release Hillary and the Council on Foreign Relations with Kerry 4+ years ago, branding al-Qaeda as ISIS. They're going to release stuff from the last year where they've been caught commanding the ISIS forces and giving intelligence to them, which our military already knows is going on. It's all going to come out. Narcotics trafficking, money laundering, 30 years of the Clintons being on the communist Chinese payroll from the time they worked with Don Tyson, who was heavy in with the Chi-Coms as well. So you want it all to come out, Democratic Party. Look, you want it all to come out. It's about to come out. And the Republican establishment is just as bad. It's all the same group. They're trying to block Trump. You've got that weasel running around, the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, saying, I agree, it's the Russians. We need to, get tough on them, and they might have helped Trump. This is the most treasonous garbage. All that ever happened was what Dr. Pieczenik said and what Tosh Plumlee said and what Colonel Schaefer said, and then all the folks I talked to off record, including generals that you see Trump putting in. And Cy Hirsch coming on here a year ago to give a nod to the audience and the rest of the media and say, this is accurate information. The only Russian operation that there's been was that our military and the Joint Chiefs said, we're telling Obama this isn't happening, and we've been given tacit approval to block it, because Obama knew he couldn't just give an order saying, oh, yeah, let ISIS run wild. So Obama acted like he was going to go along with this while the whole time trying to sabotage it. That's now come out. New York Times sat on it for a year. WorldNet Daily has it. It's now on Infowars.com. We can put the headline up there for everybody right now. Leaked audio. Obama wanted ISIS to grow. Well, hell, the CFR 4 years ago had the headline, Why We Need Al-Qaeda in Syria. Their problem was we were exposing it was Al-Qaeda, so they changed the name to their Islamic State. So, former head of psychological warfare for multiple agencies, a best-selling author, co-wrote books with Tom Clancy, you name it, produced Hollywood films. He's also developed a lot of great nutraceuticals. He's basically done it all. Another Americana Renaissance person, and that's Dr. Steve Pieczenik, who, again, has really laid out. I remember 6 years ago, he said there'll be de-evolution of the states. This whole globalism is going to fall apart across the world. It'll be dead within, 5-10 years, and it's happening. And I tell you, he was the first I heard that was this optimistic. It's happening now. I mean, it's clear the tidal surge has happened. A huge fourth turning is here. It's a mega turning, I believe. The establishment that is mentally ill, like Soros, just needs to go away. We don't want to have to bring all this stuff out. And I'm just an average citizen here who focuses on this. Like the average guy can be an expert on football or baseball because that's what they're into. I don't know anything about football or baseball now, even though I played, football and baseball. And used to, watch it and go to see the Cowboys play when I was a kid. I don't know anything about it. I know all about this. And you see, the agencies know about all this, and the military and the police and smart people are tuned in now. It doesn't matter if half the public can't find their ass with both hands. I feel sorry for them. The thinking public does and understands what's going on. So Dr. Pieczenik, again, is a psychiatrist, medical doctor, Harvard, MIT, the whole 9 yards, been in all sorts of covert operations. One of the founders was General Boykin and Schumacher of Delta Force. And I've got all my other big sources in the military. They say, no, this guy's the real deal, rock star. And he doesn't like to hear that. But you have to know the pedigree. It's like I was going to get Chuck Yeager on about 2 years ago. I got contacted by one of his family. He lives in Houston. He goes, Chuck likes your show. He'd like to come on. But he'd like to come on and talk about some of these issues he's having. And then his lawyer got involved, and then Chuck didn't come on, which is fine. Most of my audience says, who's Chuck Yeager? This guy that broke the sound barrier, World War II ace, all this stuff. So it's kind of crazy because I don't get excited meeting some Hollywood person. They're super boring. But somebody like Pieczenik, who's lived all this history, or Tosh Plumlee, that sat around drinking tequila and smoking cigars with Castro in 1957 when he was CIA. I mean, that's cool, okay? But it's like, just another old man. Well, this is such epic history. I haven't talked to you in weeks. I don't even know your particular view on this. I know we've got the same sources. It was you over a year ago said, Alex, it's not the Russians. It's the WikiLeaks has got more. If they don't back off, it'll come out. You were one of my sources. But now it's confirmed. They're waiting to release even more the next few days. If Obama and Hillary and Soros don't signal that they're going to stand down and stop trying to start a war with Russia and fake hack attacks they claimed had happened on the power plants last week, even MSM exposed the Washington Post and said that was fake news. So I'm now seeing a lot of MSM start going Trump's way, understanding that the Trump card is there, not just in name, but in reality. Now, I haven't talked to you in weeks. Is that accurate from your perspective, your sources, and where we are, the ongoing counter coup by the intelligence agencies and the American people against the globalist hijacking system?
Yes. To put it bluntly, it's quite accurate, Alex. As to the pedigree, let's just keep it. I'm an American citizen, a veteran who really cared about our country. And as I said before, it really started with 9/11, continued on with the Clintons, continued on with Bush Jr., continued with Obama. Obama came in as an affirmative action candidate created by the CIA, as I've said. He had no experience, he's had no accomplishments, and he has created absolutely nothing but a disaster around the world. Those people who worked with me quietly, and those people who understood the integrity of the republic was paramount, allowed me to say, we're going to do a counter coup. We were waiting for Hillary to do exactly what she did. I've said from the very beginning that Hillary was not as bright as everybody thought, nor were her advisors. When she fell into the trap that we said, and actually you said as well, that she's not competent, that she really has no idea of what she's doing, that she's physically and mentally not capable of being the president of the United States, she went after you. And that's exactly what we expected would happen. What was stupid was to really say that Alex Jones and the people behind it, i.e. myself and others.
Exactly, because, I mean, we all privately talked. That was our goal. I can't believe they took the bait, proving she shouldn't be president.
They did, Alex. And in the world of intelligence, quite frankly, that is pretty pathetic. That's what we call a jump shot. It was the easiest thing in the world. But more importantly than that, the people who I deal with, now remember, I do not get paid. I do not represent any official organization. I am simply a citizen of the United States. It's as simple as you can make it. They gave me the go-ahead to say, okay, we're going to dump emails that have relevance to Hillary, to Comey, to the CIA, and to a whole group of individuals who will be compromised. And I told that before it happened. The Russians were not involved in that. Putin has better things to do than to mess around with our election. He had nothing to do with it. And basically, it was completely created by those of us who wanted to see the integrity of the republic reinstated. And Trump would come in with a new way of dealing with the republic and with the people who were involved in a lot of chicanery. And as you see now, Trump did something no other president has done. He literally cleared out the Republicans who try to get rid of an ethics committee. Now, Julian Assange, I do not know him. I have never met him. I will tell you he is a patriot of this country. He allowed his services to be used by those people who I dealt with and who were concerned as I was concerned, and he was the venue. When he says repeatedly that the Russians were not involved, that no Republican or Democratic Party was involved, take his word for it. Now, I couldn't have come on to your show weeks beforehand to say, look, Hillary and the Democrats have created a coup. It's called a civilian coup. We, in turn, those of us who are concerned, I did not delineate any group or any individuals involved, will create a counter coup. How that came about was a surprise to everybody. And that was the leakage of all this email to you, to the country. But remember, you are the spearhead of much of what's happened. I know you don't like to be lauded, but it is true. Your show and your voice was an important element to spear our discontent and our anger through into something that was constructive. And the constructive part was to get rid of the corruption in the CIA, the corruption in the intelligence community, the corruption in the DNI, the corruption in the civilian sectors, and the corruption in Congress and in the candidates who were running. That happened. Now, what they're waiting for is Trump to really bring in the axe.
I understand, but let's talk about this point before you go there. And I believe Trump's going to try to deliver. They know he's moving to deliver. That's why they're so scared. 15 and a half days. Clearly, they're going to still try to go after him after that. From my sources, and I haven't talked to you about this too much, but I'd like you to get into the Hillary and the China connection. I know you can talk about that, or hopefully you will, that it's known. It got so outrageous that she was just like openly an agent of China on the phone and emails, you know, with the president of China, doing all this horrible stuff behind the scenes, that it just went too far. And then their decision to try to shut down the free press coming in last year, I mean, it just, the chatter got so authoritarian that people realized they had to move. Plus the arrogance, as you said, the fact that it's known she's had the brain tumors, had them removed. The Secret Service says, just follow her around. She's falling down all the time. 1 month after we broke that, she fell down. They said, yeah, follow the black ambulance. Well, boom. Our reporters caught her falling down for over an hour or 45 minutes in Ohio. A week before she fell down, they're inside of a medical tent with them, running around with body armor and Secret Service. So again, it's the insanity of King George III is what I'm seeing here. People had to do this, but expanding on that now, Dr. Pieczenik, just like I know before the election, they told you, it doesn't matter, we're going to block this move, Hillary's going to win, they're going to steal the states. We probably talked about that, and I said, it doesn't matter. The tsunami's going to be so big, they're going to block that. It happened. But I'm telling you now, because I know you're feeling confident, they're moving against Trump right now. Their body language, their behavior, everything they do, they've broke the deal. I happen to know that the Trump people talked to Podesta and, of course, to Obama that night. Trump said that when he took to the podium. There's been a lot of negotiation, a lot of things happening. They said, look, we know you tried to steal it. We know you failed. Just end it now. More WikiLeaks are coming out. Not that Trump's involved, but he knows from his intelligence sources, you need to stop. They blinked, but only to get time to grab sand and throw it in our eyes and come back on the attack. They just bought time. Now, everything they've done is to block Trump, the fake recounts that only gave him more votes with their Jill Stein, they're going after the electors, all of it. Now they're saying the Russians are hacking power plants. Now they're saying get ready for blackouts during the election or during the inauguration. I'm telling you, I smell and see not just scorched earth sabotage as Trump about to take office. I see real moves and a venom now in their step and their eye that I think they're going to go for the jugular.
You may be right. I don't disagree. But when you're when one is incompetent like Hillary and those who surrounded her, well, and Soros himself, what we call him the Judenrat, the Jew who worked with the Nazis, and you made that very clear. When you have those kind of people, we're not concerned because they've already been eviscerated. And when I say eviscerated, I mean intellectually, emotionally. The entire DNC is non-existent. They literally have no recourse to anything. They can do whatever they want. At this point of time, Trump talked to Mr. Slim, who owns the New York Times. What happened after that meeting? What happened after that meeting, the New York Times indicted and convicted this administration for having had the most severe suppression of writers and leakers that has ever occurred. In other words, the New York Times themselves came up and said, Hillary, Obama, and this entire group has convicted more whistleblowers, more journalists than all of the administrations put together. And in fact, one of the Washington Post editors who was involved in Watergate said that this administration is far worse than what Nixon was. So what you're seeing now is a counterattack to each one of those elements, taking down the New York Times, taking down the Washington Post, taking down CNN, taking down Fox. Now Megyn is going to, wherever, NBC, but they're not relevant. The most important issue that we have brought across, and you said, is the fact that now you have become the major voice of what is called the alternative media. In reality, the alternative media is the media, because the internet became our tool.
And that's why they try the psyop of saying we're fake news and have the arrogance to pass a law putting intelligence agencies over the FCC next year. But that only means if Obama would have gotten in or Hillary would have stayed in or whatever. I mean, that's not going to work when those very agencies know what's happening.
No, and not only it's not going to work, Obama has no legacy. What happened is we literally stripped him of any credibility and legitimacy, which he never had from the beginning. When he first came in, I said, this is a man who's created by the CIA, John Brennan, and a bunch of morons to compensate for the fact that the agency had brought us into 9/11 and that they were involved. So in their thinking, they thought a Muslim or a mulatto individual with no background and a history of homosexuality can be exceedingly vulnerable and controllable. They brought him in. He had no history of accomplishment, no history of having been anywhere other than with Peter Geithner in overseas in some posts. The truth of the matter is he accomplished nothing. The scandals that he incurred were phenomenal. Sandy Hook, Osama bin Laden nonsense, Libya. He created such a problem in Libya that today we cannot handle it.
And let me throw this in, then. Let me throw this in. I totally agree with you. As you said, we see a sudden turn at the New York Times. They say the wreckage of Obama is now being swept away. As soon as the Washington Post, it's still being loyal to Soros, with Bezos attacking with fake news. MSM shooting it down now. And so we can see the real breakaway is now happening. It's very exciting.
Alex, again, I know you don't like to be lauded, but again, it goes to the issue that you and I have talked about and have been involved for over 14 years. When you see the predominant leaders of high-tech companies, including Jeff Bezos, sitting next to Trump, that's the kiss of death for anybody who thinks that they're going to attack Trump through the Washington Post. Similarly, Trump went to Carlos Slim, and that was the kiss of death with anybody on the Democratic side or the left wing to think that they're going to use the New York Times. So what Trump has done, he's very bright and very strategic. He's literally negated and obviated any ability of the mainstream media to come after him with any credibility. So what's happened is, thanks to your show and thanks to others, the media that's becoming alternative, i.e. the New York Times, the Washington Post, they're all attacking Obama. For the first time, I read that Obama is worse than Nixon in terms of Watergate.
That's right. The flip started, what, about a week ago?
Correct. It literally, that's exactly right. So you can almost calculate from the pictures where Trump is sitting down with others who is going to be co-opted, and in turn Bezos was co-opted, Slim is co-opted.
So we see the Washington Post run a giant false flag on Friday saying the Russians try to take down the East Coast power grid, and then within hours it's debunked by InfoWars and Drudge, and then MSM jumps on the back. Normally they'd say we were lying and defend each other. They're not doing it. Does that show maybe Bezos hasn't gotten the orders to his own minions at the Washington Post? Because we know nobody's got more CIA people in at the Washington Post.
Well, they may have CIA, but again, the key element here when Trump...
No, I know, but I mean leftist foundation operatives that happen to have a CIA name.
I understand, but the point is the CIA is irrelevant. That's why Michael Flynn has been put into the White House. That's why you're going to have a military man in the CIA, Pompeo, and you're going to have a military man as Secretary of Defense. It's not for us to go to war. It's simply for us to negate any of the nonsense that civilians who've never been in war, who have created war, will be neutralized.
Exactly. We've got a bunch of trendies trying to play at war, and they've wrecked the country in the process.
Correct. Now you got it. And that's exactly what happened with Bill Clinton, what happened with Bush Jr., affirmative action for stupidity and spoilage, a guy who had no idea of what he was doing, attacked our own country to go to war in Iraq, which was a disaster. Now we have a bigger disaster. Obama has no idea what to do with 500,000 people that he helped to kill in Syria and 1 million refugees that he facilitated by his inaction and inability to think strategically and tactically. This is an indictment of Obama, his White House. His White House is, again, a repetition of the inept and happens to be affirmative action. Susan Rice, she's black. Valerie Jarrett, she's black. You go on. I mean, when you have affirmative action, whether it's again for blacks or whites, you mitigate the issue of competency. If competency,
you're just talking about nepotism.
Well, it's not only nepotism.
It's like political nepotism. George W. or Loretta Lynch. These are obviously idiots.
Correct. But when you have that kind of nepotism and you have that kind of discrimination saying, oh, nepotism and affirmative action and being a woman is more important than competency, then you lose the credibility of the republic. And that's what I was fighting for. And that's what you were fighting for. And that's what our military men were fighting for. Why the military? Because like physicians, the military is socialized to be a profession. That is, you don't make mistakes. You just don't cavalierly send people into war so they can die. You have a guy like James Mathis who's called Mad Dog, but in fact, he's so far more intellectual than any other Secretary of Defense we've had. It's completely absurd. When you think of Gates and you think of Cohen and you think of Rumsfeld, these are morons. These are guys who were pathetic individuals who worked on the issue of pandering and then getting their job because they were on the opposite side or they pandered their way through. Those days of pandering, those days of the politician, they're coming to an end. I will make another prediction. Because of the internet, we will devolve power from the federal government back to the states, back to the counties, and we will start eliminating the need for senators and congressmen. They have been wasting our money, wasting our time, and in fact have become an impediment to the rule of government.
They've turned into regional czars.
That's correct. Or as I would call it, a nursing home for those who can't work anywhere else. It's become pathetic. And so no matter whether you're Republican or Democrat, you have people like James McDermott, who I hired, was a psychiatrist for children and adults, a total disaster when I put him into the field. A complete disaster as a psychiatrist and as a regional medical officer. But nevertheless, he got elected through the Boeing Corporation in the Washington State.
Well, let me ask you a bunch of quick questions before you got to leave us, Dr. Steve Pieczenik at stevepiechenik.com. Okay, I agree with you that I'd say it's 70-30. We're doing really good right now. It looks like Trump will try to deliver. The economy's already turning back on, but they're trying to raise rates prematurely to try to sabotage that, I think. There's still a lot of problems. Like the Republican establishment is just as bad as the Democratic establishment. They're just as, quite frankly, doddering. Even if they're young, they're just a bunch of country club, people that just go to events parties and run around on red carpets all day. I mean, they're the most selfish, narcissistic, materialistic, empty idiots I've ever seen. And they're busy attacking Trump behind the scenes, going after him as a Russian agent, trying to block all this free market stuff because they've got all their crony deals. I mean, I don't think Trump is anywhere out of the woods. I mean, I agree he's got the momentum. It's just a dangerous time.
I agree with you in many ways, Alex, but what Trump understands and what Obama did before him is the fact that the executive orders are going to basically obviate the need for Congress. If Republicans don't come into step with Trump, they are going to lose and they will be co-opted. So that's
exactly. There's a new aggression in the country when it comes to getting our nation back. And Congress has to know this whole plan, when these bad, corrupt people do stuff, they're the ones that wanted all this spy grid. It's going to be used against them now, and they're going to have stuff leaked on them. They're going to have Project Veritas go after them. We're not going to stop till we make this country great again.
Correct. But remember, what Trump did was to bring Miss Chow, C-H-O, back in again, who is the wife of Mitch McConnell, which gives the warning to Mitch McConnell, clean up your act or get out. And basically, Trump has made it very clear, you either step in line with him or you're out, and you won't be involved. And so...
So he's got to get rid of Paul Ryan because he's still weaseling around.
Paul Ryan is nothing more than a kind of a policy wonk who has nothing else to do, never created a business, never did anything on
I'll
his
tell you
own.
what, do 5 more minutes.
I think what Trump has to do now is to make sure that the people he puts in place in all the institutions, all of them, are really vetted out pretty well. Now, what do I mean by that? For many of us on the Alex Jones show and the Truther movement, we can't have a reappearance of those who are neocons or neoconservatives. In particular, John Bolton, Elliot Abrams, Wolfowitz, Pearl, David Worms. There are a whole bunch of these people who are sycophants and basically gathering around Washington and Trump and basically explaining how they really didn't do anything bad for the country and they served it and they're essential to the running of our government. That's not true. He needs to clear out the entire neocon area with what Mike Flynn understands and Jay Mathis understands. And he has to clear it out because they're dangerous to our republic. These are the same people who were never held accountable for 9/11 or stand down. That's the first thing. The second thing, James Mathis, General Mathis, has to really take in stride the idol whom he wants to follow, and that's my idol as well, General George Marshall, who basically, when he came in to World War II, cleared out 300 to 400 generals and admirals because he needed a new staff. He needed a staff where a 59-year-old lieutenant colonel by the name of Dwight D. Eisenhower came in to be the head of Eurocom and the commanding forces of the World War II. He had an uncanny understanding of who were the talented people. The same case, James Mathis has to clear out the Pentagon. We have a 1-to-1 teeth-to-tail ratio, which is not acceptable. What that means is that we have one bureaucrat for one fighter. That's unheard of in the history of American warfare. We need a teeth-to-tail ratio of about 15 to 20 to 1. In other words, get rid of the 500,000 or 750,000 of the bureaucrats and promote the young lieutenants and captains into positions of power and command and control. Secondly, the issue of ISIS and Al-Qaeda has to be resolved very quickly. And that's not on the battlefield, it's back at home. Those who created it, namely the CIA and others who consorted with them, and the civilians who were involved, have to be held accountable. This is not an enemy that came out of nowhere. This was an enemy created by our own CIA, by our own intelligence community, and by our own mercenaries. If we do not clear it out, it will be an indictment again of the American Republic. It's not an issue of bombing these people out. You can't bomb terrorists out, but you can create them. John Kerry's responsible, Hillary Clinton's responsible, Obama's responsible, John Brennan is responsible, and the list goes on and on. If we hold no one accountable, we will again repeat the mistrials and misgivings of the Clinton administration and Bush Jr. We have to have a war trials committee that has to be instilled very much the way we did after apartheid. That war trials committee has to have a reconciliation element to it, but it has to bring forth all those people who were involved in 9/11, Bush, Cheney, Rumsfeld, Condoleezza Rice. Once we have that in front of the American public and the world, the Muslims of the world will see that we treat everybody with equal justice. But as long as we keep putting on Jewish ambassadors to Israel, it's not going to work. It's not an accident that the only time we have been successful with Israel and a Muslim country was under Jimmy Carter. Number one, he was not Jewish. Number two, he was a very bright man who had a willingness to risk his political capital to put together Camp David. Number three, or number two, was the fact that we had Stanfield Turner, who's director of the CIA, a military man who was number one in Annapolis. Together, we were able to put together a treaty that lasted for God knows how long, 40, 50 years. With John Kerry, we had an individual who's a CIA skull and bones idiot, literally a man who's not very bright, who never was bright, and who
I said you'd host, but I've got to ask this question. He looks like he's neurologically degrading by the month. He flicks his tongue every 2 seconds and seems to be having a mental breakdown. I mean, medically, you are a psychiatrist and an MD. Can you comment on that?
Well, I can't say very much about his tongue movements. I can tell you a lot about his narcissism, where we picked it up in the Nixon and the subsequent administrations when he went to Vietnam and brought with him a film crew. And that was totally out of, we couldn't believe what he had done. And then
have you seen the photo of him looking down the barrel of a gun?
No.
Yeah, you can't make it up. I'm sorry. I'll keep going.
I'm sorry. That's all right, Alice. You can intervene. Basically, he is a pathetic, dumb individual. He was a Jew whose father was a Jew, created some kind of name, Kerry from Ireland. But he is typical of the politicians who spent most of their years at our taxpayer dollars to hustle and to get into a position of Secretary of State. As Secretary of State, he really has accomplished very little. The Iran Treaty was something that we wanted in the military only because we needed it to offset it to Saudi Arabia. The treaty itself and the provisions have to be re-examined. And of course, the amount of money that was spent for the hostages in the billions of dollars was incredible and has to be held accountable. So we need to go back to all the administrations and basically have an open hearing, kind of what we had in South Africa. What went wrong? How did it go wrong? And this is true of Obama. This is true of Bush Jr. If we do that, then we can proceed as a country as the leading superpower, which we are, and we can continue to be.
But you're saying we lose the soft power and we don't admit all the corruption and all the bizarreness that's going on.
Well, that's not soft power. In my world, corruption's far more lethal than any gun. Because
well, sure, it takes you over. It allows you to be infiltrated. In fact, let me ask this question. You've told me privately, I don't get into what you told me, but other people said the same thing over the years, and I've followed it myself. It's very clear, the communist generals, the Chinese generals, out of uniform, meeting with Clinton over and over again, back in the 90s. I mean, out of all the people that pay off Hillary, I know she's an agent of herself, but there comes a time when you actually are really serving one master, like Bob Dylan says. And I mean, is she not pretty much a communist Chinese agent?
I don't know if she's an agent. I don't think she's that. She's not. She's basically so self-centered that she will take money from anybody and anywhere and will accommodate.
Sure. What does it say as a psychiatrist if somebody steals furniture everywhere they go, basically? I mean, they admit State Department.
Basically, this is a woman who has many, many psychological problems, including the fact that her father wasn't there. I don't want to get into her history, but her history is pretty evident to everybody now in terms of a kleptocracy, the ability to steal, the ability to create collusion, the ability to co-opt, and the inability to really think through a problem or think through a strategy which would suit the nation, not herself. And her self-referential ideas caused her downfall, as well as Bill Clinton, who helped to take her down. I mean, probably the most damning evidence that occurred, and I said it repeatedly, and I warned them that Bill Clinton would undermine her campaign. And how did he do it? He walked over to Loretta Lynch's plane and spent 15 to 29 minutes there. And
she now says she regrets that. Yeah, that was illegal.
Of course it's illegal, but that was Bill Clinton at his finest. He couldn't give a damn about his wife. He doesn't give a damn about the country. That was Bill Clinton. And I predicted that he would do something that would undermine her campaign.
You did?
He couldn't help it.
Well, by the way, you saw when he was in Israel at one of the funerals, and Obama for like 20 minutes, like, get up, Bill, get up. And I was watching Bill with the crowd. He looked like he was completely out of his mind.
Well, Bill is his own creation. Bill is not a man of achievement. Bill is not a man of real accomplishment. He's basically a smooth-talking bullshitter from Arkansas. And he was put there by Sam Walton, who had been in the intelligence community, was in charge of all of the repatriation of the Italians and Irish into camps that we had in the United States. The point is that she is...
By the way, I got to skip this network break and give you a few more minutes. I knew that, But I think you're getting into stuff that people don't even know at this point. Why don't you tell people about Walmart? I mean, since you're getting into these areas in Arkansas and the weird.
Walmart is a fancy outlet of a Chinese expansion, or basically Chinese.
That's right. The deal made in the 70s, and then now we see what it's done.
Correct. And you have to remember, Sam Walton wasn't this sweet, innocent American. He was a very sophisticated intelligence operative. I believe he was a captain at the time during World War II, where he was in charge of the incarceration of Italians and other aliens, supposedly, but not the Japanese. And he remained. And he remained in power and eventually built it up through corruption, through Chinese negotiation, and through the banks that he owned. I mean, it wasn't only Hillary that was compromised. We had, in the late 80s, we had evidence that Bill Clinton was compromised by the Chinese. Al Gore had received money. Hillary had received money.
Sure, they even gave the missile secrets.
Well, that was...
Why give North Korea the reactors that could create A-bombs again?
Because what they wanted to do was to create strategic tension against which we, the Americans, would have to confront and basically fund the military-industrial complex. It's an antiquated concept. It's a concept that came in with Kissinger, with a whole bunch of other people, but we don't need strategic tension.
Yeah, and now we've given them too much strategic power doing that to Korea. We're much stronger against China, who's already making belligerent moves. It just shows how they claim it's the strategic tension. They're really just selling us out.
Well, let me be frank. China is sitting on a very dangerous precipice.
No, I know they are, and I'm sick of their arrogance. Why do you think they're blowing up and getting on our face now after Obama's bent over to them?
Because that's their response. What they have is called the Middle Kingdom complex. You either come to China as a supplicant, but you do not come to China as a master. We've come to China repeatedly and said to them, this is what we want, and this is what we want you to do. The Chinese, in turn, react to that. Their problem is massive corruption, massive fiscal instability. There is a huge drainage of cash going out of China.
And brain drain.
I'm sorry?
It's just like going out to East Texas or places where all the really smart people have left. There's still some people, but you know what I mean? It's a brain drain.
Correct. It's not only a brain drain, but also the fact there is no more dollars there. They're losing their reserves at a very high rate, and they can't rely on $3 trillion or $3 billion or whatever it is they have.
No, I agree, and that's why the big banks are now having to admit Trump's right. We can tell China to do whatever we want. And quite frankly, some of Trump's policies will be better for China long run. They have to reform and stop centralizing control.
Correct. I mean, but what Trump said repeatedly is, look, and he was right on the nose. I think that was Mike Flynn and others who agreed. I agreed with it when he said, North Korea is China's problem. If you can't handle North Korea, don't even come to us. That's your creation. It's your problem. You know exactly.
Exactly. Stop using this little moron. We know it's you.
Right. And the fact is, this young man, or he's not a young man, Kim Jong-un, was trained in Switzerland, went to boarding school, speaks English very well, speaks French, speaks a lot of languages. He loves basketball. And he has splayed out a lot of operatives into Canada, into Europe, who are now wanting to change the course of North Korea, but it's not sufficient. And in fact, if he continues...
Yeah, let's talk about North Korea, because you're somebody, I don't know about, I mean, can I tell people, you're able to go into North Korea, you know these people.
Right. Well, I know them to the extent that I've been tracking them for about 20, 30 years.
Well, they let you in and out of the country, and you go talk to them, or you tell us about that?
Well, no. Basically, let me get into this. Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-un, his grandfather was, Kim Jong-un's grandfather was a very important man because he turned around North Korea and made it more prosperous than South Korea. Once he left, then his son and Kim Jong-un's father really went the route of a deviation from what Kim Il-sung was. And he was somebody who fought the Japanese. He was somebody who was truly a freedom fighter. Then we had the corruption come in with nepotism and eventually the degradation of a financial basis in North Korea, which was then co-opted by the South Koreans and other countries that went in and used the cheap labor. Now, Kim Jong-un, one of his major leverage points is still using nuclear weapons. That's not going to work. I mean, in fact, He's far from delivering a nuclear warhead on a missile, contrary to what most people have said. And in fact, what he does want is recognition to be part of a legitimate nation state. He will not get it if his only modus operandi is to use the missile systems. He will get it if he stands down and allows the Chinese and other countries to come in and start to turn around the North Korean budget. The real fear of North Korea and China is that we will meld them together. In other words, what happened when we were involved in the amalgamation of East Germany and West Germany, we never took in consideration the East German lack of financial integrity or the great debts that East Germany had. And when they came together, East and West Germany, we realized that there was a huge financial drain on the Germans. In North Korea, this is even a bigger problem. If they are to collapse, and we can collapse the system very quickly, China knows there'll be thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of North Koreans streaming into China.
Sure, in Russia, that's a Russia crisis because they border as well. Then why is China acting so belligerent? Is that all just a confidence act?
Well, it's basically their modus operandi, but also at the same time, they're trying to reassert at a time at which we have political transition that they want us to act in a way that's deferential to the Chinese and not deferential to Taiwan. And Trump did the right thing. He basically made a call to Taiwan and said, look, you can become the leverage point in a 30-year negotiation, which really hasn't gone very far. The Chinese need us more than we need China. Their exports are nice, they're cheap, and you can go to Walmart. But their legitimacy is a real problem. There are two elements to their problem. One is water. They have no water. 500 million Chinese north of the Yalu and the Yangtze River have absolutely no water.
And, of course, energy.
Energy. But I predict if there's going to be a war, that war will be between China and India over the Himalayas.
Absolutely.
And the second element is what we talked about. There is no financial integrity to China. In fact, China cannot give you a number that's valid or in any way legitimate. If they were to tell me their growth rate is 6 to 8%, I would say I don't believe it. Because
they're well known. It's all state-run. They execute you if you criticize a stock, calling it fake news. The penalty's death, and our crazy elite are trying to adopt the Chinese censorship model here in America. So there's obviously some real hurdles ahead, but I agree. I think we've got the initiative overall. Shifting back to the Democratic Party, they do seem delusional. Pelosi now seems to be the leader. She says they did everything fine, everything's wonderful. They're going to go ahead with their culture war map, but we know they stole 5 states from Trump. We know there were actually way bigger numbers of Hispanics and blacks that voted for him, but still record numbers did. So they seem to be fundamentally still delusional at the top, surrounded by yes men. I see that as very positive if it doesn't go too far and they start a war in the process of their delusion. But if they just stay kind of delusional and keep falling apart, that's great. My only concern is take over the Republican Party fully, purge it of all the globalists, and then move forward with absolute, technology advancements to pull the world out of the carrying capacity problem we have, because the globalists decided just let everybody starve to death, don't build the new systems, have a global collapse, use that as the consolidation model. Well, that model will probably kill everybody in huge wars. No, we have to stabilize the third world. We have to release the advanced technologies. We've got to build the space colonies. We've got to put in the undersea extraction systems. We've got to go next level or we're gone.
Well, the problem with the DNC is the problem of ageism. You have 3 of the major leaders are in their 70s, and they don't want to give up power. Nancy Pelosi has never had a legitimate contestant against her for the past 30 to 40 years. She comes out of a safe zone in San Francisco. Steny Hoyer out of Maryland is another problem. Ben Cardin out of Maryland is another problem. So the problem really resides within the Democratic Party. Either they clean it out or they reinvigorate it. Otherwise,
and they're saying they're not going to. They say they're doing a great job.
No, well, that's delusional. That's exactly what happens when you think that you're that important, which she is not. Neither are the three of them that important, but there is no contest. And for the most part, they've alienated their constituents. So there's really no more Democratic Party. As far as we're concerned, the final coup for us and counter coup was to get rid of the Democratic Party and make them impotent. And that was...
And if they push too far, a lot more is going to come out that is very damaging to the country. But if we have to cut the cancer out, we will. And that's the warning they're being given. Dr. Pieczenik, stevepieczenik.com, your books, all your materials there. People can also follow you on Twitter. Thanks for the time, and it's great to have you here with us in 2017.
And Happy New Year to you and your audience.
We are coming out of the storm, ladies and gentlemen. There are more on the horizon. We've made it through this one.